On this edition of IMCS MasterClass, we are joined by a Kenyan training specialist with vast experience in organizational knowledge management, knowledge transfer, curriculum development, and facilitation skills. A training manager at an international refugee agency with more than a decade's work experience in both entrepreneurship training and organizational skills development. She holds a Bachelor of Education degree from the University of Nairobi, Kenya, and a Master of Science degree in Entrepreneurship from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Ladies and gentlemen, here is our speaker.
My name is Mary Wangui, and I work as a training manager in a refugee agency. I thought today we could have a conversation around interviewing, especially for entry job levels. And why do I want us to speak about that? I do not have the expertise in the HR profession, but I have been involved a lot of times as a program lead in the department that I am in the hiring process, and I have interacted with a lot of young people as they come into the job market. So I thought that I have some tips or hacks that I could share today, a conversation around how do you prepare for that interview, how do you present yourself during the interview, and also how do you do a follow-up. What are some of the tips that I could share with you around that? So where does the interviewing process start? The interviewing process starts when so for the interviewee, when you see the job advert, the advertisement that is seeking to fill a position, and that means that you as an interviewee look at not just the title of the position that they're looking for, but the job description of that position. What do they want? And often at the job entry level, it is not too deep or too detailed, but it's still very important to pay attention to what are the educational levels needed for this position. What is the experience, if any? Have they asked if you should have experience? And what are the skills that are needed? Why am I saying that? Paying attention to those descriptions that are already put there helps you to prepare your CV and your cover letter. Note, you should never use the same cover letter for multiple job applications. You should always tailor your cover letter to the position that you are applying for. So it means you've looked at what is being requested. If this person is looking to fill a position maybe that needs about a year or two experience with this skills level, I would be sure to mention that in my cover letter. Not necessarily duplicate it, but make sure that I'm answering. It's sort of like a chance to answer to the request that has been put out. I would also say at this stage, it's like the interviewing process has started from when you start to make your application. I would do my homework around that organization, even if it means going to their websites if you do not know anyone who works there, or just looking around what does an organization in this sector do? What are their day-to-day activities? And then that equips you. You're not being very new. And in addition to that, what are the other, for example, are there laws and regulations around the work that people are doing? Are there recent happenings that have happened that probably affect this sector of work? It may sound like it's too broad, but you never know where some of that information could be needed through the interview process. And then going back also to what are your studies around what is needed. If the education, for example, qualification for this needed. Let me give an example that could be in the context of Kenya. Maybe you needed a CPA-K, for example, for you to apply for this accounting job. And it has been some time since you went back to your notes to see what it was like. I think I would refresh a bit on what is this educational background that is needed to this. So you've started the interviewing process. And I want to speak to now, what do? I have prepared my cover letter, I have prepared my CV. But I've seen recently there are a lot of, just beyond uploading your CV and uploading your cover letter, there are questionnaires that come with that application process. I would urge you to take very seriously those questions that are asked at that questionnaire level. It's sort of a pre-qualification stage that you should take as seriously as though you were preparing for an actual interview. So does it ask you to describe yourself a little bit? Make sure you do. I mean, pay attention to those details. Does it say in 100 words, maybe speak to the experience that you have in this line of work? I have seen sometimes people skip that or put not applicable, or not give that question some serious thought. And this is really what separates the candidates when it comes to the shortlisting stage. You should indeed ensure that you have some time to think through their responses and to answer them as sufficiently as though you would if you were, in an actual physical interview. So I'm still at the pre stage before you have been invited to an actual interview, and I have said I think the things that you need to pay attention to are your cover letter. Is it tailored to that job? Is your CV updated? Does it flow? I have seen sometimes people forwarding CVs that have formatting errors, that have grammatical errors. I think those are things that speak to you as a person, and the interviewer is looking for thoroughness, is looking for detail-oriented, is looking for someone who is organized. And these documents, even before you speak for yourself, already speak for you. I don't think you have to put so much in the CV. I think you just need to put what is truthful and what is enough, but let it be organized, let it be well formatted, let it, let you not have some fonts different from one paragraph to another. I think all those are things that you need to pay attention to. And then I have said now in the preparation stage, if there's a questionnaire that you needed to fill, please give it as much seriousness as you would to a physical interview. That is very important. Now, in a scenario where you're pre-qualified and you are invited for a next stage of the interview process, maybe it is a skills test. Some organizations invite you to a skills test before they have a physical interview. How do you prepare for a skills test? I think the first stage again for me is to go back to the job description. What did the job description say? Who are they looking for? Are they looking to fit, somebody who is of this educational background, of these qualities, Make sure that you're paying attention to that JD, that job description, so that the skills test, then as you're preparing for the skills test, it is likely to be a bit of technical testing in that field, but also it could go out of that to look at your way of thinking, your problem-solving skills, Some of those questions that actually expose you to things outside just what you learned in class. So I would say, again, take it very seriously. There are scenarios where you're sent your skills test in a virtual kind of assessment system, so maybe an online test. Unfortunately, we have cases where people have thought that you could copy-paste some of the material, I think it's important to know that, again, the HR persons who are following up on this process have also put in measures to check for honesty, for, just being a person who is bringing good qualities to the organization. So if you do not answer the questions truthfully, or if you do transfer answers from one scenario to, there's a lot of cheating through the HR process, but I think you must be aware that there's also a lot of checking. But if I was again to step back to who is an IMCS, who is the person who has been brought up in the movement, there are values that are instilled in us to live in our everyday lives, and I think this is where these things are also checked and tested. If we can be truthful and answer as we know, I think it puts us at a better position than somebody who sort of tries to cheat through the process. But most importantly, it's very easy for the person on the other side of the desk to know if indeed you answered yourself, or if you transferred the answers from another place, or if even somebody sat, and did that test on your behalf. So I would highly discourage fraud around the interview process. It doesn't do you good, and it also it does come out. So it brings me back, I think, as a person to our Christian values, to the values that we have learned in the movement, and even to the confidence that has been instilled in us over the years. Indeed, we are able, indeed, we are capable to taking on these positions in our societies, and we shouldn't doubt ourselves. But again, anytime you go through a process and not be truthful, then it reduces the confidence you have in yourself in the actual implementation of the job. So we are now at the skills test. Again, asking that you take it seriously, answer it as honestly as you can be. Try to read instructions very carefully. Sometimes there is a compulsory question. Answer it if it says that. If there's a time element to it, try and answer as many questions as you can. Then just do that. Don't feel the pressure then to finish every question. Do a quick scan of the paper, see what you're comfortable answering, and then be aware that maybe the speed element is also being tested. But if you can answer as many questions as you are and get them right, then you're likely to sail through the process. So once you have made it through to a physical interview stage, you've been invited to a physical interview. I would say, when an employer writes you an email and invites you to a physical interview, it is important to acknowledge that in an interview and respond. Sometimes people forget to send a response in email confirming their availability. So I think it's important to just answer, say thank you for the opportunity, and say that you're available if you are available. In scenarios where you're not available at the suggested time, I've always said don't shy away from communicating with a person. Human resource persons are human beings like us. They understand their circumstances that may mean you're not available at the suggested time. So don't be afraid to get back and say, maybe this is happening at this time. Is there an opportunity to reschedule? Of course, don't go too far out of the window, the time period around which you are invited. But what I want to say is, don't be afraid to reach out and speak to them if there are circumstances that may mean you're not able to get to the interview station at that time that they have suggested. So once you get to the interview, my one tip is always be confident and be at ease. You know, these people have invited you to an interview because you have made it through quite a selection process. So you're already more than halfway there through the job. So feel at ease and be confident, because you already, I think, have done quite some work, and you have qualifications that get you to that desk. More often, you will find that most of the people who are getting to the physical interview have the educational qualification. They have a lot of maybe the experience that was needed in paper. And this is a chance for you to voice out, you know, for your communication skills to come out and for the extra skills to be seen. You know, what makes you now different from the other 5 or 6 people that made it to this stage. So it is important to know that this is the point or the chance, the opportunity that you have to sell yourself. So the interviewer probably knows you do have a degree, or you have 2 or 3 years experience. But what does that translate to? What does it mean? It needs to come out as you're speaking, as you're talking, and as you're responding. You need to ensure that by the time you're leaving that desk, the employer is feeling convinced that what you wrote is indeed something that you have done. I encourage people also to share their truth, you know, to share their story. Let me give an example. If you're given a question around, maybe speak to a project that you once helped to see through, or that started and finished, and what were the outcomes, like speak to a project you were involved in. I say and encourage people not to think through scenarios that they haven't been, you know, just to come out looking good or looking like you did something fantastic. Just think of something that you did in reality, even if it looks simple. The thing is, what is being tested is not the magnitude of that project. It is really your involvement, your ability to start, to plan, to set goals, to see them through, to state an outcome, you know, to solve challenges in between. That's really the test, and that's what needs to come out. So it's not even so much how big that looked like, but how was the process? And it's good for the interviewer to be able to see that you have those skills. They could just be looking for planning skills, organizing skills, problem solving skills, critical thinking skills. So those are the things that they are looking to come out. So especially as persons who have been involved in the international movement of Catholic students, there are a lot of activities that you do at the university. It could be a cleanup activity. It could be being involved in an environmental day. It could be even be organizing a beauty pageant or a fundraising. Those are activities that in themselves have given you some sort of experience around project management, and they are experiences you should be willing to share and don't feel like they're not significant. And again, the physical interviews looks for suitability. You're looking at that person. When you have 5 people with the same educational qualifications, with the same experience, who stands out? Who is a good fit for the organization? So you speaking out what you have done as a leader, as a member of the community, as a problem solver, could be what makes you stand out against the rest of the candidates. So I would say be willing to share the truth, share what you've done. You could also give a group activity, but explain your role in that group activity, but just be truthful and honest. And I think that's what helps us connect with the panel, with the panelists. I think finally, just to close this, is to say avoid one answer kind of responses unless you are asked a yes or no question. Feel free to go a little bit to explain what your yes means or what your no means, unless again it is stated that you should only answer yes or no. So at the end of the interview, again, feel free to engage the panel and ask them questions that are relevant to the interview process. That's what I would say, or to the role. So look at, for example, if I'm invited to a second interview, if they have said there's a second interview, what kind of responses could these people give me that help me to prepare better? Or if there are aspects of the organization I don't understand, broadly, without being even very detailed, can I ask one of them to speak to? I have seen people talk about what would success for this candidate look like, for example, if they were onboarded, or you're asking the panel, what does this organization do in this line or this? Just trying to understand the question, the organization. But let it be relevant. Let it be a question that really, even for you, does add value. Don't ask a question just because that slot has been presented. And again, if you don't have a question and you say, no, you're good, you're comfortable with the interview process, it doesn't in any way remove any of the scoring points from you. So feel comfortable to engage this panel. They are human in every way, and be confident, because again, like I said, the reason you're there in a physical interview is because you made it through quite a thorough selection process and made it to that far. So I wish you the best, and I hope this segment was helpful. Thank you.